Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Education Matters with Jim O'Connell. Very happy to have you on board. As you know, this show is carried numerous times during the week, so if you want to know if you're watching live, it's Tuesday, the 14th of May, and we'd love to have you call in. There are no bad comments or questions. Well, maybe they are, but we have a very broad range here of what we're willing to hear, and so please, this call-in number is 640-3091. The other way you know if you're watching live, of course, should be that that number will be somewhere on the screen you're looking at, and if you're watching it later in the week, the number won't appear. So the number is 640-3091, and you're very welcome. I have some guests with me tonight who I'll introduce shortly, but I want to just talk about something for tomorrow night. As many of you know, Dr. Vargas, our previous superintendent, his last day of work was the last day of April, and so since May 1st, our two assistant superintendents have been acting as co-superintendents for the district. That's Amy Allen and Jen Gillis. And so there's been a superintendent search process gone on. That process was that a company was employed to do a national search. Sadly, I think at the end of that national search, only 11 candidates were identified, and of those, 3 were chosen. 2 of those 3 were Amy Allen and Jane Gillis, and the third gentleman is a gentleman from Utah. If you're watching this on Tuesday the 14th, you should be aware that there is a meeting, an opportunity to meet each of these 3 candidates on Wednesday night at Memorial High School, and the times for those, you'll find all of this as usual on mansd.org. But the times for those meetings at Memorial are on Wednesday 5:30, 6:30 and 7:30. I'm not sure which order the candidates will be in, but the format will be that one of the candidates will be introduced at 5:30 and the public will have an opportunity to ask them questions. There'll be a question and answer session for an hour, followed by the second candidate at 6:30 and the third candidate at 7:30. Now, all of this is all going to happen very quickly because the plan, as I understand it, is that the school board expects to choose a candidate on Thursday. Okay, so if you have the opportunity and the time, please go along to that meeting on Wednesday night. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome. I have 3 wonderful men in my here in the studio tonight, and I have to say I've been doing this show for more than a couple of years now, and I've asked these gentlemen in the past to come on and join me and offer their experience and perspective on education in the city. And they all have more experience and a deeper perspective than I do on education in the city of Manchester, and I couldn't get them to come one at a time, so they've come all 3 together, so I'm a little outnumbered tonight, and I'm hoping for the best. So if you see me getting overwhelmed, you please call in 640-3091. So my 3 guests, starting from the furthest on the left, the first one is Brendan McCafferty, and Mr. McCafferty is the principal at Hillside Middle School. He also happens to be the president of the Superintendents Association or Union in the city of Manchester. Principals. I'm trying to promote him already. And he's not one of the candidates. So Mr. McCafferty has been over there, and he and I was the president of the Hillside PTO for some years, and had the great pleasure of working with him. Next to him is my good friend Phil Sapienza. Hi Phil, welcome. And Phil is a teacher at Hillside Middle School who's been in education for many years in the city of Manchester, and is a repository of lots of facts and details, and understands deeply our school system and teachers and where we are and how we got there. And then my third guest tonight, of course, is Bill Krantz, who welcome Bill.
Hi, Jim.
And Bill is the principal of the MacLaughlin Middle School in Manchester, a place that's a source of much discord in my house from time to time, because you see, in Ireland I call it MacLaughlin, and my wife insists that I'm making a fool of myself. She says nobody knows what you're talking about. It's MacLaughlin. So we have this MacLaughlin thing that happens over spaghetti from time to time. So anyway, welcome, Bill. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Jim.
So the point of having you on board was, if I had any one of you on your own, we'd sort of drill into one of the schools or whatever. But since you're all here together, I think we're going to, let's have some free flow conversation about where we are. The fact that a good place to start might be that we do have a new superintendent. This opportunity means that there's a new day again happening in Manchester, but we've gone through this many times before. Let me start with you, Mr. McCafferty. What do you think? What are your thoughts when you heard Dr. Vargas was leaving? Not to start with controversy, but let's just start there. When you heard he was leaving, and how do you feel that affects the district, and what are your thoughts about going forward?
First, I'd like to thank you for inviting all three of us, Jim. I'd like to also add that we're all three Manchester natives who have been here for a long, long time, and we're just interested in trying to make things a little bit better. And I'd also like to say there are a lot of, just start by saying how many great things there are happening in our district, how many great people, great teachers, great folks involved in trying to push things forward. So I think they're exciting times, and I also think, Jim, these are some scary times as another leader is leaving on even shorter time than the previous leader. So I think we have some strong candidates, and we're hopeful to get the right combination, because this is it seems like people say this every time, but this is a very critical time for many reasons. So we're looking forward to seeing how the school board approaches this, and who they hire and how they hire. So Dr. Vargas, I think, made a great effort here. He left quickly, so it's vital that we get the right successor or successors in place.
All right. So, Bill, let me ask you: how did you think? What did you think when you saw? I mean, did you have a response to the fact that we only had 11 candidates? I mean, I have to say, I thought that was a negative, that there was a short number of people who were willing to come to Manchester.
Yeah, I was honestly, I was very surprised, because in past searches there's been a significant number, and I never wrote them down, but I know it was more than 11. And it's concerning, because I'm not in the heads of the people that didn't apply, but sadly I think that Manchester still struggles with a perception that it's really difficult to navigate the political realities of
right.
Of the position of superintendent in particular, and it's frustrating for me as a lifelong resident and employee of the district, because our kids, we have this conversation where I have to do something tomorrow.
Right.
We have kids that are in our care, and you're a parent, and you expect us to be hitting home runs with them every day.
Right.
And what we're doing isn't good enough right now. And it doesn't mean that there aren't great people that are working their tails off to try to do the best with what they have. But my sincere hope is that whoever the team ultimately is at central office, that they will be afforded an opportunity to continue the good start that Dr. Vargas and his team
Right.
has initiated, for the purpose of doing right by our kids, and then ultimately ourselves.
Right.
I mean, we want to make sure that our kids matriculate through the school system, and they're able to make their own way in a lot of different metrics. But
Right.
that's the gist of it.
So Phil, let me turn to you for a minute. I mean, as a teacher in the district, and a teacher who's been around for a long time, I know that teachers, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I know teachers are, whatever the word for upset is, disheartened, etc., by the fact that they've now worked for more than a year, again, without a contract. So I'm sure there's a lack of, there's, I don't want to put words in your mouth or other people's mouths, but obviously teachers don't feel supported and empowered in the district, etc. The departure of Dr. Vargas, does that not compound that? And then the question, and that's the around. And then how do you think teachers respond to the idea that we got 11 candidates and where we're going next?
Well, just like you don't want to speak for me, I don't want to speak for other teachers. I can speak for myself as a teacher.
Right, right.
I thought he was fabulous, and I was very disappointed when he left. As a parent of a student in the school district, I was even more disappointed because I really believed that he had students' best interest at heart. What did surprise me is that he lasted as long as he did,
Really?
because the environment that he was working in was very, very difficult for a number of reasons. And I really thought that he dedicated himself. You know, he didn't ask for a lot of things for himself personally. He sacrificed. He was available not only to teachers but to parents. He was available to the community. He was available to administrators as much as I could see. I'm not on, inside on that. And like you've said, and Mr. McCafferty and Bill have already said, now here we go again. We're looking again.
Right.
That's not a good recipe for a successful school district.
Right.
So hopefully we land on another Dr. Vargas-like superintendent, because I really thought he had what it took.
Right. So I know that I don't want to spend the whole hour talking about just the superintendent search and et cetera, and I know there's the fact is that two of the candidates are former principals in the city of Manchester, and so they're people well known to us, and I know them personally, and I like them both. But I want to put that to one side. My opinion is that, we can go to, you said, Mr. McCarthy, we've got strong candidates. I would disagree with you. I don't think we've got strong candidates. I think we can make a positive out of what we have. I think the fact that our two co-superintendents have got knowledge of the system, will hit the ground running, they're good people. But if they were to go and apply for a job in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, or Lawrence, or Lowell, or wherever it is, they wouldn't, to be kind to them, my opinion is they wouldn't make the cut. They haven't got the experience, they haven't done it previously. You're not going to jump from never having been a superintendent anywhere to being a co-superintendent for 30 days to being the superintendent of a 14,000 person school district. So I hate to throw the hardball at you, but I just disagree with this idea that we've got strong candidates. The other gentleman, who I frankly don't know that well, but looking at him, he was a principal of a school in the town of Murray. We all know where that is, right? Murray, name the state, anyone? Murray in the state of, happens to be in Utah, the great city of Murray, Utah. He was a high school principal there less than 2 years ago. So, I don't want to dump all over the whole rain on people's parade, but we've got 11 candidates. We end up with two well-intentioned, nice people who've never done the job before, and an executive from the town of Murray, Utah. I mean, how can you turn that into a positive?
Thanks for your disagreement.
We should be used to that by now.
Exactly. Right. So I think Ms. Gillis and Ms. Allen, our local candidates, are very talented. They have a year to two experience at the assistant superintendent level. So oftentimes you'd want more than that, right? And I'm not sure about the gentleman from Utah. We certainly hope the search is open to all three of them. What we have to look at is, unless we're going to extend the search, right? Unless we're going to extend the search for another year. This is another byproduct of the underpinnings being too weak underneath our superintendents who continue to come and go. So until we can correct those things, and if we're not going to extend the search, we have to choose from these three folks. So having said that, right, we got to field the team from who's in front of us. And what I spoke to the board about last night was, I think you can make a great case. Each hiring time is different and unique. I think there's a great case to be made for co-superintendents right now, because what Ms. Gillis and Ms. Allen lack in long-term superintendent experience, they understand Manchester, and they want to be here. They like being here. They know the folks. They know the systems. They know what needs to happen, and you cannot undervalue that.
Right.
Too many folks come and go because it is such a hard place for many reasons, some of which we'll talk about later. So I'm concerned because if I think there might be some board members who are insisting it has to be one why?
Right.
In some ways it hasn't worked. There could be a built-in support system. If they went in this together, you could figure out the rest of the mechanics, and maybe they have a chance of lasting 3 to 5 years or longer. And I fear, if any one of these candidates gets the job, alone, they're going to fail, because there are too many undermining elements out there,
Right.
as we currently sit, for them to succeed. So I think we have to field the team from who we have in front of us, and that's why I'm looking at it like that. And they are very talented, though a little on the green side relative to superintendent experience.
And Bill, the two current co-superintendents right now as well, right? I mean, you made the point and made it well that you've got, it's kind of immediate. There's an immediacy about it, right? You've got a job to do tomorrow, and it's like the rest of us, well, not you guys, but us talkers, right? We have the opportunity to sort of go on and talk about what we could do next, what we might do. In the end, you guys have to go in and deliver education to kids tomorrow morning. So, how do you feel about? Would you be comfortable with this idea of that Mr. McCafferty has talked about, maybe having co-superintendents? Is that something that you think will work?
Yeah, I absolutely think it will work. I mean, if for no other reason, like, we just got to keep it simple. My experience with both of those folks is that they genuinely care about the kids in Manchester, and that they are very capable of setting the context in conversations with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the Board of School Committee. That's really what we're doing here now, is the attempt to tell a story in such a way that we can hang new knowledge on existing hooks for folks like yourself that are kind enough to talk about education and to try to help us in any way possible to get what our kids deserve. So I am very confident that those two folks would do a wonderful job, and I'm very hopeful that this gentleman from Utah is at least as talented and whatnot. But I have no hesitation that they won't be able to get it done.
Right.
And we worked with Miss Gillis in a more personal way. She was a principal at Southside.
Right.
We've met with her. We've broken bread with her. You tend to get to know people
Right.
from the inside out, and I don't question her character at all.
Yes. And I don't question her character either. I was just, my as I said in my remarks, I like both of them, and etc. I just wanted to challenge the idea that we had.
If I could add one,
Yep.
so the other thing that they're going to get is, because of the administrative relationship with them.
Yeah.
As soon as the email went out that they were going to be sharing the superintendency.
Yeah.
Almost every single individual administrator in the district replied back and said that they're going to give whatever help they can. That's
Right.
huge.
Right. It
So
is. Yeah.
if you've
Yeah.
got, every single school saying, hey, whatever you need, just give a call and we're going to help out. I think that's huge.
Right. They certainly have goodwill.
We have
Yes.
a caller on the line asking for Bill to get closer to the microphone.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I'll bring the microphone
I
closer.
was only doing what my boss told me to do.
All right.
Well, should have called.
All right, there you go. Imagine that. You got what's wrong with this? People are
One
going around.
nothing McCafferty.
Yeah. People are going around the back end. All right,
They
so
wanna
so
get
let's
fancy.
let's talk about obstacles to success, right? So I've been here. One of the reasons why I do this show, and I do it every week, is because I think that if the people, my premise is that our schools are underfunded. We know that they're the least well-funded schools in the state of New Hampshire in terms of per capita spending. We've got the highest pupil-teacher ratio in the state of New Hampshire. And we've said that so often it's sort of lost impact. People have heard it and they kind of put it away. But I want to ask you, if you, well, let me, Phil, just jump in. What's your thought or response? And
I know you're not supposed to answer a question with a question,
that's
but it'll tie it into the last comments. And to get it out of the way, I'm not qualified to pick a superintendent by
Right.
myself. I might be able to be part of a team. But my hope is that it's either a local candidate or candidates. So that being said, and that's coming from a parent,
Right.
not so much a teacher. A teacher, I'm fine with it. A parent, I'm even more involved. So
Right.
I'd like to see a local or local candidates become superintendent or superintendents.
right.
But to your question, why are we picking a superintendent again? And
Right.
again, and again, and
Right.
again, which is the same question you're asking. What are the obstacles?
Right.
So the big buzzword, root cause analysis. Well, why does this happen? If it happens once, it could be an anomaly, or twice.
Right.
If it just keeps repeatedly happening, and they don't leave like with a big grand party and everybody's hugging.
Right,
Most of them leave on not so welcome terms,
right.
but from both parties.
Right.
So what do we need to fix?
Well, in the case of Dr. Vargas, for whatever reason, he's leaving in a critical point of the year, let alone the critical point of it with, the redistricting plan going on and Manchester Proud doing its work and lots of other moving pieces. And I don't want to criticize him because I have no idea what went into that decision, but it's highly unusual to your point about they didn't just kind of leave after a set of. He left in the middle of a year. Announced that he was leaving in January. He gave 4 months' notice, and that's not usual. And he was clear to say he was leaving for personal and professional reasons, which is, he's just been polite enough not to name the professional reasons.
But it's not unusual around here.
Well, I take your
Which is,
point. I take your
which is
point.
what we need to talk about.
Right.
And not to put it on a superintendent or
Yeah.
anyone, but what are the challenges? What are we looking at? What do we need to fix?
Right.
And where
right.
do we start?
Right. Well, I've said, in my worldview, right, I've talked about the funding issue as being key. And there are people who just don't want to hear that because they want to talk about everything else. But I'm willing to talk about all the topics. I just want funding included. So in your school, to bring it down to that perhaps, Bill, so what are the major challenges in terms of, well, I would say in terms of resources, but what makes your job harder every day, or Brendan, whoever wants to jump in, like what is it that you...
So I can get on that one. I've been recently, I think I've come up with, I don't know, what I hope is a good, respectful way of explaining what I perceive as our biggest obstacle. So if we were to compare knowledge with a hook, right? So we have behavioral knowledge, we have math knowledge, we have knowledge of the language arts, etc. I think that my staff would agree with me that the single greatest obstacle for us is that how do we manage a child's behavior who seems to demonstrate that they don't have foundational knowledge in the area of how to behave in a school.
Right.
And that's a delicate conversation. I mean, I don't know why we have so many kids that have temper tantrums and don't want to follow rules and run around the hallways and are disengaged and whatnot. And that requires, I think, a skill set that is beyond most classroom teachers, most principals. We're very thankful to have a new social worker for each middle school, and our guidance counselors are working their tails off, and Office of Youth Services is helping us. But we need more because we can't even begin to hang new knowledge on academic hooks if they exist, if we can't get a kid to engage themselves
Right.
in the educational environment. And that sounds dire, but that's what we're dealing with, and it negatively impacts that individual child. And then the reciprocal damage is, the other kids in the room that are losing instructional minutes because the teacher is trying to deal with me who's misbehaving. And then here's the critical kind of punch in the gut. The kid doesn't know that they don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
And so it requires a massive amount of intervention to get me caught up socio-emotionally and factor in the trauma, the opioid crisis, etc. And it's no surprise that we're dealing with a pretty good population
Right.
of students that are, I would describe that way. And I mean no disrespect. I mean, I grew up in the inner city. I've seen things that I'm describing, lived in it.
Right.
And sometimes it's just luck that you meet the right people
Right.
to get yourself out of bad habits or don't develop bad habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's kind
So,
of a-
and is that condition deteriorated over time?
I would say yes,
Yeah. And how many years are you at McLaughlin now?
20 years.
20 years. Yeah. So you've seen this progression or regression, actually.
Well, and I think it leads to burnout, and you can't get burned out if you don't care about kids.
Right.
Like the burnout is rooted in the fact that you really care about these
Right.
young people. And it's like it doesn't matter seemingly what you do or how you do it. It's just that you're not able to reach them.
Right. So Brendan, and you've been at Hillside now. I know you were at Beach Street before that, right? So you've been in the school district for many. How long have you been at Hillside?
This is my 9th year.
So in those 9 years, have you seen this? Have you seen the issues that Bill describes increasing? That the kids are less
Yeah.
prepared to learn, etc.
Yeah, if I may, because we're
Yeah.
on obstacles, right?
Yeah.
I'd go even below that to a foundation level below even Bill's talking about. This is my 13th year in administration in the school district. And I want to give, first of all, a lot of credit to everyone on the school board and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, because they're giving their time, their effort, et cetera. It's noble. It's giving to your community, and that's all very, very positive. I think our number one obstacle, without question, right now in the city of Manchester, and I say city, Jim, because people need to realize the correlation between a thriving school district and a thriving community.
Yep.
You don't have one without the other. Number one obstacle right now is our governance, and I think all well-intended people on both sides. But if you're there are elements on maybe both sides that are obstructing us. We can't even get out of the box because of things that are happening there. Now, all the things that come down to us at the school level, we have a unique perspective through what we have to execute every day, and there are hundreds to thousands of things that factor in. We have to take what's given to us or not given to us and make the best of it. So we get to see a lot of these different things, Jim, and I think there are I had friends that did a grad course years ago with their superintendent, and the superintendent said, for example, the school board should be seen twice a year, at the beginning and the end of the year. And our school board's wonderful, but it has moved from an oversight group to a group that's really a de facto everything because of what we don't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we don't have, Jim, is a K-12 curriculum, instruction, and assessment committee. One of the most important things we should have. So really, like last night, there was 2 hours of talk that if there was a curriculum, instruction, and assessment committee, would have been just reported out in 5 minutes. They'd be handling these things. So we go on talking about the things that aren't as important as the things that aren't being talked about. And then let's flip to the Board of Mayor and Alderman side. Mm-hmm. Great group of folks, but because they oversee our dollars, they need to be involved more on a regular basis. And recently, Alderman Sapienza and Herbert, I think, put it really well. Alderman Sapienza said, hey, listen, all this talk of 6 groups with no contracts, that's on us. No more us versus them, blaming the school board, blaming us. And Chris Herbert spoke to that even more positive, saying, hey, we can do it, we can get it done. And if you live this day in, day out, year in, year out, we can't even get out of the box because of there are certain undermining elements on the boards and certain structural elements that are obstructing us as well that have to be addressed. Over time, a lot of people feel the school board has become the show instead of overseeing the show. And with respect to everybody on there, it is, I'll go back to what Bill said in the beginning, it's just not good enough. Mm-hmm. And people out there need to know we have great things happening, great people, but that doesn't preclude us from coming forward and saying where we're at isn't good enough.
Right. I just have to say I found myself twice being in disagreement with you tonight. And the first time was, the strong candidates comment. And the second time when you talked about sort of the wonderful school board. And you didn't quite say that, and you moved afterwards to talk about how it had a problem. Now, it's very easy to sit on the outside. I would say, I'm not talking about what you've said, but it's very easy for people on the outside to sort of throw bombs and grenades and bricks, metaphorically, on top of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the school board. But boy, do they invite it, So while you say it's a noble occupation, I think I often say to members of the Board, Mayor and Aldermen and to the school board, that I'm grateful for the amount of work they put in, and because I am, it's a lot of work, and I know they mostly are well intentioned. But as I said to them last night at the school board meeting, the fact that we did end up with 11, not to go back to this, but the fact that we did have 11 candidates and we ended up where we are, that there was a reason why people were choosing or not choosing to come to Manchester. And I made the point that it was echoed by local parents who were, and the surrounding towns' parents who were choosing not to send their kids to the Manchester School District. There's a reason why teachers are handing in their notices and going to other school districts. And while it's not the only cause, I made the point to the school board that they should look to themselves. That whether it's perception or reality, the fact is that if you ask the average man and woman and parent on the streets of Manchester, and they look at what happens on a school board meeting in any, they see dysfunction, they see acrimony, they see discord, they see a non-concentration on the core issues. We have this wonderful, but farcical in the end, offering plaudits and to wonderful children at the start of every meeting, and then we abandon them after that, and we spend 4 hours talking about anything but kids in seats in classrooms with a teacher in front of them. So I bring it back. I don't agree that we have, but I would also, when it comes to the board, mayor and alderman, they have no place to hide, because anybody who's on the current board of mayor and alderman, or who has been on that board for some time, they've overseen a system in Manchester which has underfunded our school system for year after year after year after year. So they can do all the finger pointing they like, but in the end, they own the problem. Now, I don't want to spend an hour talking about the dysfunctionality on the school board, but I don't want to hide away from it either.
So, before Phil goes, that's what I wanted to thank the folks first, right, and softly lead into it. But so over time, agreeing with you, they've become the show, and that can't be the case anymore. Off the top, some people need to make some adjustments. Some people need to probably be removed from that board if we have any chance. The district office now you could say, is nearly decimated, and there's a direct correlation, if you trace back over years, to the operations of that board. And then, like you said, on the aldermanic side, and you hear people saying, we need to do more by our schools. On the aldermanic side, even recently, we need to do this. What are you doing?
Right.
Get involved. Because, again, it's where we're at is not good enough. And
we've got a call coming in. Phil, if you just let me grab this. Hi, caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. My name is Helene Stanley.
Hi, Helene.
I'm a teacher at Hillside Middle School. I've been in the district for 32 years. And I just wanted to say I can't agree more with some of the comments made tonight. For example, I probably should...
Go ahead, yeah.
The fact that our school board members, only 11 candidates applied as superintendent. I think the school board needs to accept some responsibility for that. And I think also the fact that, I think the way our school board members think is it's going to be okay if Manchester becomes a district where it's a great city, there's so many fun things to do, there's so much, but put your kid in a charter school or a private school. And I think we need to own up to that. Our district used to be proud and strong, and those of us that love the kids need to stand up and stay strong in this and understand that this current board and the MEA leadership is failing all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene. I appreciate your call. Good night. All right, well, there's somebody with 32 years experience in the school board. Phil.
And one of our best, by the way.
Really? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I didn't think I'd be sitting here tonight refereeing between you and Mr. McCafferty, but I'm glad to jump in. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Just a statement of fact. He used the word volunteer on these boards. That's a term of the past. When you're collecting a $2,500, I believe, stipend for school boards, not a lot, but it is a stipend, and $5,000 for aldermen, it is a stipend.
Right.
And here comes the punchline.
Yeah.
And a comprehensive health care package. And I don't want to get into that whole discussion, but I'll say it this way. You can throw the word volunteer right out.
Right.
You're not volunteering anymore. I don't know any coaches at East Little League or the Manchester Babe Ruth League or itty-bitty basketball or the soup kitchen or wherever else, the churches or the choirs. They're not getting comprehensive health care, not only for themselves, but their spouse and their children.
Right.
So, just for a statement of fact, they cannot call themselves volunteers. And it's disrespectful, because many of them do. And they tout their service. You used to be able to do that when there was no compensation. Now you're being compensated. So I think sometimes if we got everything out in the open, but to your original question, things that we need, there's a list so long, and you can't argue about it. We need, he said it, we need more support, not more support, we need a lot more support at district office. Just things that every school district or most school districts have just to function on a daily basis. We need more assistant principals in our buildings because our students have a lot of diverse needs and challenges.
Right.
We need more supplies. We need more technology. We need more remedial reading programs. We need a math curriculum. Are you really talking about a school district with no math curriculum or a math curriculum of the minute?
And how do we even get there? Like, how does a school system that's been around since, Methuselah, or is as old as Methuselah, end up with no math curriculum? Like, how does that happen?
Say something and ask Bill to take it from there. That once again, if we had a curriculum, instruction, and assessment team of 3 to 5 people in the district that just focused on that, that would have addressed probably 2 hours worth of the meeting last night. Bill, what would you say about that?
Right, so
in terms of its importance?
just for clarity, at the central office level.
Right.
So those folks have been wearing multiple hats, and they really need to be respected for the amount of work. I mean, they're just grinding it. I mean, the number of hours that they have to put in, and then they're sometimes disrespected by board members because there's no appreciation for how much they're supposed to know when they're wearing more than one hat. Like, if those people were doing the job that they were originally thought they were going to do, then you can have an issue that you weren't prepared for a meeting,
Right.
say. But man, when you're wearing 3, 4, 5 hats,
Yeah.
and then you still get killed on TV, right?
Right.
In front of whoever's in the boardroom, that's disrespectful. So that might explain the 11 applicants. I mean, no one should be treated that way.
Right.
So.
And I'd like to just
Yeah.
add to
Well,
that. Sorry.
But the curriculum piece is huge. I mean, like, we don't talk about the real reason we're all here, and it's our kids. How
Right.
do we not have folks guiding all of us, teachers, administrators, with what we expect kids to know,
Right.
and then the supplies with which to deliver what we would like them to know? Like, that one's a no-brainer.
Right.
And it all comes down to no money.
Yeah. Well, and this is the stuff that drives me nuts. See, as I know there's a big story, right? But I'm not in the school every day, and I don't see, I'm not saying people are hiding it. Maybe some are, but any of the metrics I look at. So I love to go back to my lowest funded school district, all the way, because it's easy to understand and it's a fact and it can't be denied. But any place else I look, the places that it's hard to say, what's the right number of math teachers for any given school. Now that becomes, you might know those answers, but for the public that becomes a debate that's endless. It's like, how big is a paper bag? So. But when I look at things like truancy, attendance, right, we know there's a direct correlation between days in school and success. And we have one truancy officer for 14,000 kids. Now, that truancy officer actually is responsible for all the kids in our school district, so that would include kids in charter schools and other schools. We have a caller. Let's grab this person. Go ahead, caller. You're on the line. Hello.
Hi, Jim.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for having me on the show. No disrespect to the panel and to you, but I am I worked for the Manchester School Department, I'd say 15, 20 years ago.
Could I interrupt you and just ask you, could you give us your name, what your name was?
My name is Ricky.
Oh, Ricky, yeah, go ahead, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and I worked for Manchester School Department as a para for about 3 or 4 years. And then I was put into a position that I really wasn't qualified for. And I would love to go back and work for Manchester, but I had such a toxic experience, not only with administration, but as teachers as well. From watching, I'm a Manchester resident now, and watching the school board, it's really difficult for me to reapply to Manchester. I teach now in one of the surrounding areas, and I just hope that Manchester can really get it together to the prominence it once was.
Can I just drill in?
I'm really enjoying it a lot.
Right. Can I just drill in on one question, Ricky, just before you go? So, could you be a little, just touch on the point again about the reason why you wouldn't apply for and work in Manchester today? I can understand, say, the acrimony on the school board, etc., but...
I'm sorry. Manchester has a reputation around with teachers that when you first start out there for the first 3 or 4 years, it's kind of like a tradition that a large percentage of the teachers get pink slipped, and then in late August you get called back.
Right.
I don't know if Mr. Krantz or any of the board that you have there has ever heard of this, but it happened to me twice when I was there. Got hired back, and then eventually I decided to move on because
Right.
I couldn't take it. I needed a more stable place to work.
All right. Well, Rick, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and we'll
Yeah,
put
I
it...
appreciate your board members being there. Everybody, especially the gentleman, the teacher who seems to. You have a lot of different perspective of what's happening.
Good.
I appreciate the show.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
thanks, Ricky.
Bye-bye.
I appreciate it. Bye. All right. So,
There it is,
there you
Jim.
go, Phil.
Ricky just gave us an hour show.
Right.
What else is there to say? He just laid it right out.
Right.
There it is. And that's not coming from somebody on your panel, or it's coming from a teacher in another district that had an experience here.
Right.
And that story can be told and retold.
1,000 times.
As much as some aldermen, JKL doesn't want to admit it, or others, or aldermen saying, well, you guys never asked us for the money. Really, Mr.
Right.
Barry?
Right.
Or Mr. O'Neill saying, well, we gave them the money, they could have done whatever they wanted with it. They could have either paid the teachers, or they could have put in all the programs they said they were gonna put in.
Right, right.
And that's how we run the show.
Right, and of course, they're
So-
just so we be clear, because in the end, I don't often get to talk back, but I get to talk back here, which is they're just simply wrong. You say JKL, Joe Levasseur, Joe has said, and I've brought it up with him in the past, about how, and in fairness, I haven't heard him say it in the last 12 months or so, but he might have, but I haven't heard it. And he said, we don't see any teachers leaving, it's obviously cushy enough, and if there was a problem, and then we have other people some of those who are running for alderman, running for school board now, who say, if they don't like it, tell them get lost, there's loads more out there.
When
So-
Joe started saying that, it was true. But it's not true anymore, so maybe that's why he stopped saying it.
Right,
But the
right.
point being, with that long list of things we need that everybody on this panel has talked about, we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Not even scratched the
We don't have
surface.
an alternative middle school. We don't
Right.
have enough speech and language professionals. We don't have enough physical therapists. We don't have enough occupational therapists. We have them walking out of the district left and right. So where does it end? We don't have enough guidance counselors, believe it or not, even though there's social workers.
Right.
It's an endless list. And one of your points was, how did we get there? Well, it took some time, it took some neglect, it took some underfunding, and it compounded every year.
Right, right.
So unfortunately now, we're at a crux. And the part that's more frustrating for me now, is that these are good economic times, and we're not making any strides, I shouldn't scratch that. We're not making enough strides forward to catch up, or
Right.
even to just stay where we're at.
Right, right.
So when are we gonna do it?
Yep,
Because the 7-year-old's gonna be 15, as Dr. Vargas would say,
yep,
in the blink of an eye.
right.
We gotta capture it now.
Well, I had a child in Manchester School District. I still have one now, but my oldest daughter, when she was in 7th grade, and I think it was her. Anyway, but Dr. Brennan said to me one night, in a moment of lucidity and truthfulness and forthrightness, he said basically I'm going to have to abandon 7th and 8th grade, and that. That he wasn't broadcast. He said, and I said, I've got a daughter in 7th grade, and he said, and he shook his head, and he just said, he said, the things we can't do it all. He said, but that was the words of the superintendent's mouth. We're going to have to abandon. There's nothing we can do for. He didn't say that. He said the words. I have to abandon this 7th and 8th grade. That's a fire I can't put out. And so there was an admission to a parent, me, saying that your daughter just happened to be born in the wrong year. She hit the Manchester School District at the wrong time. And luckily she had other supports. I think of all the kids who were around her who didn't have it. But Mr. McCafferty, your response to Mr. Ricky, for instance, and his comments about people getting pink slips and I mean, how hard is it for you to get a para? Are you able to get paras, or what's the issue with paras?
Well, that can be challenging. What I would say about what Ricky said, most importantly, in my experiences, is because of several things. The budget needs to be done by the second Tuesday in June, right? So we tend to not be hiring until July, and that's after some different transfer processes. So that's just when the jobs get posted. We tend to often be hiring at the end of July and August, months after surrounding towns, right, have gone through, picked out some very good folks, right? So you're really looking at a shallow pool. Over years, like Mr. Phil said, it's been compounded that the word is out there. Not only for a few years were our teachers getting pink slipped, we were without a contract for multiple years, and we might be heading into another one. It's become less desirous to apply, and you see it. We've seen it every summer. There are fewer and fewer people applying, and it's unfortunate because we know there are a lot of folks who are from here, want to come here, like it here, but they look at that and they say it's not a secure place to invest my time, my energy, my money in terms of a career. So I think there's a lot of truth to what Ricky said, but I also think, I've said it before, half jokingly, how could we put someone on the moon in 1969, but we can't find a way to seriously turn the budget back a few months earlier, be hiring earlier? Just like something like that would open a lot of things up, because what people don't know behind the curtain is things that are very thinly staffed district office just bottleneck and log jam in the summer over this, the hiring. I think a couple of years ago they were probably hiring 200 to 300 people in the last 6 weeks of summer. How can you get anything else done? Never mind, like you should be using that time to plan and spring into
and how can you get good candidates?
1 to 5 years, right? So, but I think, I don't know if someone mentioned all hands on deck earlier. We need all hands on deck from the aldermen and the school board and parents to really recognize the things that need to get adjusted. And I'm very positive that they can be adjusted, but there needs to be recognition of it, planning, and a will to make it happen.
Right.
And right now, I think sometimes it just feels like there are too many cooks in the kitchen.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, I've been on the horns of this dilemma during this whole process for years and years of wanting to not tear down the edifice, so to speak, right, and say, this is wrong and this is wrong. We don't have this and we don't have that, because that's all true. And at the same time, the difficulty is, how do you offer something positive? I think most people in the Manchester School District, teachers, principals, parents, children, everybody would be. I think, or most people would be okay with saying we're moving in the right direction. People are looking for the bottoming out to stop and for a plan to be put in place so that we know we're moving in the right direction. But they don't see that, and so it makes it very difficult. I listened to Mr. Deschard from the principal at Manchester West last night at the school board meeting. He said that he had was it 7 or 11 people had come to him for signing recommendations for people who are moving out of district. I think, Mr. Krantz, you said you had done a few this year already.
Absolutely.
So these people we're losing, and we're losing the good ones, right?
Yeah. Well, and I would not want to suggest there's any bad ones, but when you have the younger folks, to Ricky's point, when there's tough times in the budget, the way things work is, the seniority thing kicks in, and sometimes we lose those new folks that are, there's a reason we hired them. Is how I'll put it, and that can be demoralizing.
Yeah.
To the person that got the pink slip and to the staff, because we just don't seem to be able to hang on to the best of the
best. I got to tell you, you guys know way more teachers than I know, right? So just from because I know not just teachers, I know every other profession too in my work, and but I know a slew of teachers and principals who are in surrounding towns and towns further away, who have been trained in Manchester, learned their trade in Manchester, loved Manchester, wanted to be in Manchester, and ended up being pink slipped, or in more recent years have chosen to move. And it's very disheartening. So, the job of work that our two co-superintendents, or our two co-superintendents are attempting to do now, and whoever the new superintendent is, I don't know if this is, last gasp corral, but, we need something. There has to be a degree of urgency from our board, mayor, and alderman, and our school board. Would you agree?
So what
Yes.
Dr. Vargas was trying to do, and I think he did a good job of it, is establish a baseline of services as compared to surrounding districts.
Right.
And it's frustrating when you look at how a middle school at Goffstown is staffed, and then you compare it to a typical middle school here in Manchester, and it's mind-numbing to me that imagine if you provided the resources just equal to surrounding districts. We're already doing really extraordinary things. Imagine if you actually gave us on par with other districts.
Right.
And I hope that doesn't come across as arrogant, but it is. There's a reason why we're as good as we are,
Right.
and there's a reason why we're not as good as we could be.
And need to be.
And I'm all over praising all the hard work, but man, it's getting old,
Right.
and it's not good enough. And it's great to celebrate the hard work that folks at central office are wearing multiple hats, or our fellow administrators are wearing, putting in really long hours to make up for whatever things we don't have. Just imagine if we had the proper number of guidance counselors and social workers, et cetera. We'd be crushing it.
Right.
And
Or the
people
proper
would be
number of
lining
English
up. We'd have
teachers.
to be turning families away because there wouldn't be any housing available.
Right.
Because we're doing such a great job, and we're leveraging what I think the Manchester Proud folks are trying to demonstrate to everyone, which is this is potentially a great city for everyone to work in and live in.
Right.
But, I can't say this, I hope I'm wrong. Do we really want to go over to charter schools? Are we trying to, make it so our public schools are not the first option? And if you want to do the other thing, that's fine.
Right.
But can we not do both?
Yeah. Or simply, fund our public schools, or resource them properly, give them what they need to do the job well. Mr. McCafferty.
I'll defer to Bill for a
Yeah,
second.
we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left here, just for your Phil.
Touching upon Bill's point of the staffing, and sometimes it comes across, I hear a backlash from the public, which I'm not real concerned with, but the political bodies that say, well, that's what they want, more money, they want more staff, they have enough, there's less students, why would they need them? And I can understand their view. Because if and until you're living it every day, it really doesn't make sense. But when you get in there and you're dealing with it on a one-to-one basis with a student or a family, or a student that doesn't have a family to support them,
Right.
then you understand. I used to believe that I had a pretty good grasp of what these children were going through.
Right.
And I guess the older I got and the wiser I got, or at least more experienced I got,
Yeah.
I don't think I got any wiser, it struck me as, wow, you're here every day and you don't even realize how much they need. And when you
Right.
talk with other professionals, you hear other stories, or you see different situations, it's really gut-wrenching. And they need some real basic things.
Right.
And they're not there. A lot of our students use our nurse's office as a primary care physician.
Right.
They use our cafeterias as their, and I'm not bashing students.
Right. Right.
I
No,
want to
no.
give them more.
Yeah.
But they use our cafeterias as their primary food source.
Right.
Now, if you want us to educate them, we're all for it. That's why we're doing it.
Right.
But we need help.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it comes in a lot of different forms, and one of those forms is financial.
Right.
Yes, it's a very expensive proposition, but so
people-
is healthcare.
Right.
You know why? Because they're both worth it.
Right. Right.
And if we keep falling behind, unfortunately, it gets harder and harder to catch up. But even worse than that, people, young people, fragile people fall through the cracks,
Right.
and it's not fair.
Well, very well said, Phil.
I would just
Yep.
add to what they both just said. Bill said it more subtly. I do think there are elements on the school board that are anti-public education. And people talk about that. I'm not going to mention names, but
Right.
it's mentioned quite often in the public. And you go back, Dr. Brennan confided in me years ago, he thought there were certain elements out there looking for us to fail. I think we got to shift to what we're not talking about oftentimes. Again, on the board meeting last night, there's a couple of hours, but we're not talking about, there's a new categorization of, by the DOE of failing schools. So we have a few schools that are termed as failing at the elementary level. That's going to be coming our way. So that's coming our way, but we don't have a curriculum instruction assessment team to be driving that, with a data analyst to be driving that. We're not talking about having a complete menu of services for identified students in special education, alternative programs, all things that would take a little air out of the tire here, make it much more, much better for the kids, right? And we're also not talking about what our priorities are. That was alluded to last night from some of the school board members. Dr. Vargas mentioned we need $54 million more for our schools just to be on par for what we need. We're not going to get there overnight, right? Mayor Craig has some big obstacles in front of her. I'd just like to finish just that. But we're not even talking about what would that bring with it. I think it's about $40 million worth in building repairs that are on the list to be done. And I'll just add one more thing, Jim.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, former Alderman Ludwig, when talking about the police complement, I'm not sure what the correct police complement is now, 275, 300. He said you could hire 400, 600, 800 police officers, and it won't matter if we're not funding our schools correctly, right?
Right.
Because that's just going to grow and grow and grow,
Right.
because there's safety, there's investment in schools. So, again, it's not about us, our salary, our benefits. It's about the connection between a thriving district and the community.
We missed a caller coming in there. I'm sorry, caller, we're down to the last 2 or 3 minutes here, so I think that's probably why it got cut. But so where do we stand? Where do we stand now? What do we think? If you had your magic wand, what's the well, actually, I want to go someplace else since we're down to the last. I do want to ask. I don't want to get into a kumbaya where it's all lovely and do what others have done, but under Dr. Vargas, what would you think the biggest positives were? Like one or two things, something that was done or that he did successfully.
So, Bill.
Yep.
No, I think he made a genuine effort to bring people together. The Manchester Proud is a manifestation of that, and the mayor deserves anyone involved in that happening.
Right.
Kudos. It's just common sense. I mean, we need to learn how to work together to identify root causes. We need to do it as apolitically as possible because we're trying to help our kids.
Right.
And I think that's an outstanding
So it's
model.
a collaboration thing that he did that.
Absolutely.
And Phil, do you
I was
have a-
amazed that there was somebody out there that was as talented and as dedicated as he was,
Right.
and what he gave me was hope.
Good, good. And Brendan, for the third time, it's like biblical, the third time the cock crows and all that stuff. Let me go after the third time. You're right. You said about the 54 million that Dr. Vargas said that we needed. He didn't say that's what we needed to do everything that we wanted. He said that's what we needed in order to have the average funding of the state of New Hampshire. That's where he said 50, which he was correct, and people can go look it up on the state website. If we get $54 million a year more, we'd have the average school district spend in the state, and everybody knows that Manchester has one of the more challenging and expensive populations in the state. I'm sorry to have to end this precipitously, but I'm getting the nod from beyond. We've come to the end of the hour. Can you believe that? Wow. Did that fly or what? I'm very grateful to Brendan McCafferty for coming here tonight, Phil Sapienza, and Bill Krantz. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, and this is not platitudes, I'm not into platitudes, but these three gentlemen are an example of the things that are right about our district and the things that give us hope. And while we have people like these three gentlemen and many other like them in our district, we will we can succeed. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Good night.